Well, I've brought in my Jamaican passport. This is the passport I travelled to England on in 1964. It tells you sort of, where you were born, date of birth, which country. When I came, I was 4 foot 4.5 inches, and that's my picture. Well, my journey coming from Jamaica, was mixed emotions. First of all, I was leaving my grandmother and all that was normal to me, I suppose, up until that point. And yet, at the same time, there was an aspect of, oh, it would be interesting to see this England, which everybody talks about. Yeah, so, and I came by ship. Yes, my mom, because my mom, who had lived in England since the 50s, came down to get me and my brother, and my two siblings who were born in England. She'd brought them down with her to come and collect us. So we all came back together, my mom and my brother and I and my two sisters, and we came on the ship, yeah. 16 days on the Escania, yes. Yeah, I was 9 when I came, and I saw it I wanted it to be a holiday, I think, and yet I knew that my mum wanted us to come and live here. So, and I think part of my agreement, I thought, with my mum and my grandma was that I could go back to Jamaica when I was ready. Obviously, it didn't happen, because once I got here, I ended up having to stay, so. No, I didn't, because obviously I came when I was 9, and then it was schooling, then, and I think really resources wasn't available. I mean, there was 6 of us children at home by the time I'd have probably been able to travel. And so I started work at 16 and then did my nurse training. So, and then started having children myself, so yeah, so. Yeah, so I didn't get back. That's a sad bit, actually. Oh yeah, yes, I used to write regularly to my grandmother. So I kept in touch. And it's not like today where you've got the internet and the mobile phone, where it's now so easy to speak to people wherever in the world you are. Back then it was a letter, and the letters took forever. I think my experience is probably not very much different from any immigrant who leave their homeland to come to live in a different country. And that's compounded by the fact that really I didn't know my mom very well, and I didn't know my dad at all when I came to England. So I was fitting into a family, and I was one of the elder ones as well in the family, whereas back home I was the baby. I was my grandmother's baby. So the old dynamics of my life totally changed from being like the baby who was spoiled. And I recognise it, that I was my grandmother's baby, to come here, and I was the big one, so I could do stuff, and even things I'd never done before, like, oh, you can wash or you can iron. And I'm like, no, I can't. Yeah. Very, changed. Everything was different. The environment was different, from being free. And I think that's what was very different, is when you come to England, everybody lived in a box, like the houses were all the same along the street. And you wasn't free to just go and play with your cousins like I was back home, and climb trees and run around all day. So everything was really different. Yeah, very different. I think we're very adaptable, aren't we, human beings? And so you just understand where you sit within anywhere. It's like even when you work in an organisation, you know you have to fit into that organisation in order to be able to do your job and to keep your job. So I think it's much the same, you know, when you come here and you come into a family that it's your family, but your family that you didn't really know you'd heard about them. But to actually live within that, and the constraints of living here was very different, I think. I miss the freedom. I think that's what I miss the most. I think back home you're just free, you know what I mean? You're running up and down all over the place. You're going to pick your mango or your jackfruit or whatever it is that you want, you know, and here was just different, yeah. But I've fitted in and just got on with life, I think, yeah. Yes, after school, I decided, you know, because you used to have the careers lessons and stuff, and I knew I wanted to work with people. And when I was about 14, I'd scalded my leg. And so I went back and forth to the hospital for quite a long time until that healed. And I actually liked how the hospital run. It was an interesting thing for me. And, you know, meeting, you know, the different carers and what have you, and just watching what happened in the hospital. So after that, I started going to the library and getting books about working in a hospital. I remember my first book was Working in a Hospital. And I thought, yes, I think I would like that. And so I decided that's what I'd do. And I became a cadet nurse when I was 16. And that was, you couldn't start your training till you was 18. So, yeah, so I was a cadet for about a year, 16 till 17, no, 16 and a half, I think. And then my dad wanted us to move to Derby, where most of his family lived. So we moved, and I got to Derby, and I thought, oh, yes, I'll go and be a cadet. And they said, oh, no, you can't start until you're 17. And that was like going to be a few months' time. And I thought, oh, no. But my mom wrote to the hospital to say, you know, she's already been, you know, working as a cadet nurse. Could you please reconsider? And they did. So I started my cadet nursing in Derby. And then at 18, it was time to do my training. And now that was interesting because I was a cadet. So we know that at 18, you start your training. So a lot of the girls, the other cadets, because there was loads of us, that was a fun time actually, being a cadet nurse, because you didn't really have much responsibility, but you were helping out in all the different areas in the hospital. And so it was fun, but learning as well at the same time, and making new friends who had the same interest in what they wanted to do. So when I was 18, the matron started calling some of the girls to come for their interview to go for their training. And she didn't call me. So one morning I decided I'm going to go and see matron. And really, back then, you couldn't really just go and see matron if you wanted to. You had to make an appointment to see matron. But I thought, no, I need to know what's going on. So I went up to matron's office and knocked and said, I want to see matron. And when I saw her, I said, well, when am I going to start my training? And she said, oh, you want to do your training? And I said, well, yes, that's why I'm a cadet. Your cadet nurse is like the stepping stone to doing your training. And she said, well, I thought you could be like an auxiliary nurse, which is like a healthcare assistant. And I said, no, that wasn't the idea for me. And she said, well, you know, you could do that for a year or two, see how you get on. And I said, well, that's not what I want to do. And she said, well, you know, that's what's on offer. So I left the office and I just went and got my coat and I went straight home. And I said to my mom, I said, you know, I can't believe that matron wants me to be an auxiliary nurse and not start my training. And so my mom rang up the hospital, rang the hospital. And then times you didn't even have a house phone, really. She had to go out to the phone box and phone the hospital, speak to matron and say, you know, Nordia's come home, she's very upset because you're telling her you wanted to be an auxiliary nurse. And matron said, yes, but that'll be good experience for her. And my mum said, no, that's not what she wants to do. She wants to do nursing. And so that's how I ended up doing my nurse training, actually. So, you know, I give thanks to my mum, really, for advocating on my behalf. And Hold on. My eyes watering. I'm not crying. In terms of how I think black people were treated then, and probably to some extent still treated now, it is different. But I'm thankful that my dad was very pro-black. I didn't recognize it at the time as a child, really, but he always used to instill in us who we were, you know, who our family is, that we mean something, you know, back home, and, you know, and told us the history of our family, our grandparents and what have you. So I think my family anyway, grew up being proud of who we were and being proud of being black and felt equal, I think. I think I've always felt that way. I've never, ever, I don't think, felt that I wasn't equal to my white counterparts, even though there were challenges. Even in nursing, there were challenges because, of course, my mum, first of all, had to speak to matron to say she's not planning to be an auxiliary, she's planning to do nursing. And even with that, matron then said, okay, she can do the enrolled nurse training then, which was the practical nurse training, which they used to really try to push you towards doing the practical nursing rather than the registered nursing. And of course, as a practical nurse, it meant that your journey had a ceiling to it because you did your nursing and you cared for patients, but you were never going to be a staff nurse and you was never going to be a ward sister. And certainly, I don't even think back then most black nurses were thinking any further than probably being a sister or staff nurse. So so there were limitations, but it's about learning how to negotiate those, you know. I think that's it. You know, my mom, I think, more conformed to the British way of life, and it was like, don't speak patois and, you know, what have you. But my dad was very much like, you know who you are. You know, you are a Hutchinson, and this is your family back home. And, you know, you don't have to be, if you want to be the Prime Minister of this country, you know, that's what you could be, you know. So he always felt that his children could be whatever they wanted to be. And, you know, and now I think as I'm older and I reflect on it, I realized how empowering that really was. You know, at the time you don't really get it quite, you know, but yeah, definitely he was good. Oh gosh, I worked in healthcare all of my working life because I did my enrolled nurse training, and then I started to have my family. And then when my children had reached a certain age, I decided, okay, it's time now for me to do the nursing conversion course so that I can be a staff nurse. And so that's what I did. So I converted in 1990 to be a registered nurse, and I did like a year's staffing, year and a half, and then whilst I was doing the conversion course, I was exposed to working in maternity care, and I really enjoyed that placement very much. And so after I'd done staffing as a nurse for about 18 months, I applied to do my midwifery. And that's what I did. So I did my midwifery training from 92 to 94. And then I did midwifery for the rest of my nursing career, actually. And it was a good journey. I sort of was able to actually do my training, become a staff midwife, become a midwifery sister, become a midwifery coordinator, in charge of the labour ward, and, you know, and so, yeah, so my journey, you know, was good. It was good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being a part of that experience of helping that woman to bring her child into the world. That was really lovely. You know, it's been a great privilege, really, you know, to be at that pivotal moment in someone's life. Yeah, very special. Yeah. Well, now I'm a retired woman, actually. I retired, properly retired, in December of last year. I sort of stopped for a little while, about, I don't know, about 3 or so years ago. And then after a year or so, I thought, oh, gosh, what do I do? Because when you've been, I think when you work in a job which has kept you quite busy for throughout your life, really, to come to a stop is, oh dear, quite difficult. So I went back and did a bit of nursing for a couple of years, and then retired finally in December last year. And I don't know, I just think it's probably God inspired because I'm a woman of faith anyway. And I didn't know what I would quite do when I finished working, professionally working. And I thought I'd probably spend 6 months in the Caribbean at a time or whatever, help out with grandchildren. And it just so happened really that, because I've got locks, I wanted to make some natural products for my locks. And we grow rosemary, and rosemary was one of the herbs that my mom used to use as a conditioner in our hair when we was growing up. She'd always rinse our hair with rosemary water. And we've got rosemary in our garden. And I thought, maybe I could make something with rosemary for my hair. So I made rosemary oil and sort of gave some to everybody, work and what have you. And they were like, oh, this is really good. Can we have some more? Can we have some more? So eventually I thought maybe I could do this, make oils. And then I started making some body butters as well. So that's what I do now to pass my time. I make body butter, shea body butter, and I make oils, natural skincare. So yeah, so that's where I am now and enjoying that. You know something, I think, for all of us as, or the majority of us, I think, as immigrant children, especially from the Caribbean, because I speak of the Caribbean, because that's where I'm from. I grew up with my grandmother making everything herself. She made coconut oil. She made coconut drops. She made, everything that she grew, she turned it into something. And my mom used to sew and, and sew very well. And she taught me to sew. And so I think we've grown up with our parents and grandparents being very productive because, of course, money wasn't plentiful. So they learned how to turn their hand to anything, make style out of anything. And I think that's just a natural thing for us. And I think my mum would think, yes, nah, dear. Yeah, no, she used to call me Miss Nah. Yes, Miss Nah. You do good. That's really good. Yeah, my grandmother would be very proud and my mum would be very proud to see that I've become enterprising. Yeah, I think that was really good. Yeah.